I was trying to do a story with Vibe magazine back, we're talking 1999, 2000, 2001. I was going back and forth with the late great George Pitts. We had a conversation talking about, you know, at that point he had too many documentary stories, and I said, I'm very interested in doing these portraits, kind of in a way a little bit um, about how Richard Avedon did the West photographs, or this kind of white stock thing, and I didn't really want to repeat that his white stock thing. I wanted to put my own little twist on it. After photographing the balls and seeing the book come out and all that kind of stuff, I said, all right, what else can I do, and what else do I want to do? And I started to say, all right, I think what it is I need to go into the balls again, and photograph color, because I feel like the outfits, the costumes that they have are so colorful and so rich in color that it also then allowed me to think, all right, how else do I want to document this scene? And I feel like to have this kind of focus, single out image of a person who actually walks a category is much more interesting. And so I started, like I said, I started bringing in a backdrop with lights and photographing them on it, and I put them on gray because I wanted to single them out and let them pop, let the color pop even more. So that's kind of where the formula to this part 2 came from. Ballroom scene in some ways started with a femme queen named Krista LaBeija. Krista LaBeija used to do basically the white pageant scene back in the 1960s, and because she felt like she was being discriminated against, she's the one who created, I would say, modern day ballroom scene today. Balls are basically like a fashion show slash beauty pageant, where there's categories, and most of the categories are broken up into 4 different groups. There is femme queens, and that is a trans woman who's a person who's transitioning from male to female categories. Then there's what we call butch queen categories, and a butch queen is considered just a gay man. And then there's butch categories, and that's basically a trans man, a woman who's transitioning from female to male, and then the women categories, right? And so they compete with each other for trophies and money. Now there's like so-called 5 elements of Vogue now, where there's hand movement, there's something called a duck walk, something called a back bend. And I think that's very, very difficult to photograph, because I like to photograph stuff, especially where you see the audience too, right? It's just not just the performer doing its thing. I want to see the reaction with the performer plus the reaction with the audience itself. And I think sometimes what happens is you're in spaces where the stage is lit, but the audience is in dark, and you have to kind of maneuver that. I like when things are that you see this kind of natural look to the thing, even if it just goes black, it doesn't really matter, right? The other thing that changed when I was photographing the balls was the whole idea around realness, and I think part of it was because of hip hop becoming a much more rougher kind of music, right? Realness in hip hop was a huge thing. I think the whole context of West Coast rap was being almost like gang driven and blah blah blah. It changed how people at the balls wanted to look like. I think even, it's funny, I remember going to Philadelphia, and a lot of the real big time rappers from Philadelphia wore beards, and then beards became this huge thing, and all over my thing. And then now with the whole kind of, I would say, the connection with tattoos have become this huge thing where every young ballroom kid has tattoos, when I first started photographing the balls, people barely had tattoos. So I think it changes, but it doesn't change that drastically. But it's just certain things that then start popping out because the overall society is shifting and changing, and of course, then that then ultimately then puts something on balls or allows balls to change because it's almost like a dance between the ballroom community and the overall society, right? They're kind of like mirroring each other and they're kind of looking at each other and talking to each other, right? And so that's what I would say changes. And of course, then I have to then change because of that.
The difference between Legendary and this project, like Legendary is about me allowing you into what the ballroom scene looks like, right? It's a snippet on the inside, like being an inside person on what ballroom looks like, right? How somebody is getting ready, how somebody thinks about performing, snippets like that. This project is the idea of taking them out and individualizing them. Like say, all right, we're only going to deal with person A, or we're interested in dealing with these two people and their relationship with ballroom and their relationship to me as a photographer. I mean, I've had lots of issues when going to museums and galleries with my work, and them struggling to figure out ultimately how to put it into their so-called box of positive images of black folk, right? And so in turn, you have this twofold question, right? You have photographers already uncomfortable with homosexuality, right? Then you have a broader audience who is then uncomfortable with it too. And then you have this twofold where African American photographers are completely afraid because ultimately they won't be able to make money doing it, right? And you know, sometimes the bottom line is the dollar bill. But I also think it's important as us as image makers to ultimately challenge that position. I do believe that people would be interested in making those images if they could ultimately make a living off of it. I do believe also that you're right in the sense that photographers do have issues with making images like that because it's uncomfortable for them, because they also have those same issues that museums and galleries have, to think of those images as being so-called positive images, right? And where that leads to is part of that process. You know, most photographers homophobic, or African American photographers homophobic. I can't say that, but I can say that they're not willing to challenge their own homophobia. Successful photographers challenge all of who they are and what they are, and if they don't, then they're not. They never will become successful photographers, or photographers that are going to make enough of a statement that people would be interested in the next generation and the next generation to actually look at. So, I mean, I think that's the other challenging thing for them to understand, that it's important to challenge themselves, right? And by doing that, you will make work that the world will want to see.